Hello and welcome to the Scholar Progenium. This weekend I'm heading down to Warlord HQ for a tournament, so I thought, as we all love an army list, let's take a closer look at what I've put together. So yes, chaps, Warlord Games have very kindly invited me down to participate in a tournament that they're hosting at their HQ this weekend. Now, they've billed this tournament as a friendly introductory version 3 event, and they've really emphasised the fact that they want thematic lists, not spicy competitive lists. Now, this always raises an interesting question when you go to an event where they bill it as more friendly, because when you go into a competitive tournament, in inverted commas, you know, the sky's the limit. You go as hard as you can in your list because that's what everyone will be doing. But when you go into a friendly event, it's where do you draw that line? What is a friendly list? Well, the parameters of the tournament themselves are 13 dice max, it's 750 points max, and it's 4 platoons max. Now, 4 platoons I don't think is going to be an issue at all, but 750 points is actually been really fun to write a list for, because ultimately I generally play at 1250. Every version 3 game I've played essentially has been at 1250 points or thereabouts. So, going down to 750, it's a totally different ball game. Now, I know that we're playing on 4x4 boards, so it's a smaller board, and that means longer range weapons aren't as necessary, and you can get away with taking shorter ranged weaponry, and you don't need to be as mobile. You don't necessarily need those transports to get where you're going to go. In terms of missions, I know that the time frame is 2 hours per mission, but they haven't released the missions yet. They're going to release them before we get there, but they haven't released them as of yet, so I can't tell you what they're going to be. But of course, I will be doing an after action report on Sunday for you guys, so make sure you're subscribed if you're just stumbling across this video so you can see how everything went. Now, before we go into a deep dive of the list that I am taking this weekend, I thought it might be fun to have a quick glance over the list that I'm not taking. But before any of that, a quick reminder, if you're not familiar with the Finnish rules, of what their army special rules are, as that will help contextualize the choices that I've made. So first of all, they're trained huntsmen. What this means is that if they've got an ambush dice next to them, they can re-roll failed morale checks. On top of this, if they change that ambush order to a fire order at any point, even at the end of the turn, then they get to add +1 to their to hit value. So they'll hit on a base of 3 instead of 4, which is great. They also have the Sisu special rule, which means that once they lose half of their original squad number, they go up a veterancy and a leadership. So if they're regular, they go up to veteran. If they're veteran already, they get +1 and go up to leadership 11, which is great. On top of this, when they're outflanking from reserve, then they can ignore the -1 modifier to come on from the outflank from the reserve. And on top of that, all infantry count as being equipped with skis. So totally for free. If there are winter or snowy conditions, which I doubt, but you never know, it is a thematic event, then they can just move for free. They ignore those penalties, which is great if it comes up, which it never does. However, let's take a look now at the original list I was going to take. Now, I started off thinking, right, this is a friendly tournament, so maybe try and be a little under on the dice count, don't max it out, and try and stick with a theme. So the first list that I had was just simply 2 platoons, a rifle platoon and a artillery platoon. Now, in the rifle platoon, I had 4 squads of 7 men, 2 of those squads having an LMG, them all being sissy veterans, which means that they can advance into ambush with the Master of the Hunt special rule, and on top of that, they're all tough fighter. They're led by a regular lieutenant, platoon commander with a friend. On top of this, I had 2 regular light mortars in that rifle platoon, and then in my artillery platoon, I had it led by a regular platoon commander. You can't take inexperienced as a Finn. And then I had 2 heavy autocannons, a light anti-tank gun, and that was it. However, there's a couple of reasons why I didn't take this list. First of all, although it's only 11 dice, it seems quite spicy to me. 2 heavy autocannons is going to rip apart light vehicles, soft skin transports, and infantry alike. The light anti-tank gun's going to quickly pop any light tanks with that 3-up starting value to hit because of its bonus to hit vehicles. And then, of course, 4 squads of 7 guys plus 2 light mortars. It's got everything it needs. So I wanted to reduce this down a little bit, and the first thing I looked at was those heavy autocannons and those light mortars. Not just because they're solid units in version 3, especially with the increased range on the light mortars and just the heavy autocannons being just great all around, but also these 4 models are actually 3D printed. Now, I'm sure Warlord would be totally chill about me taking down 3D printed models that they didn't make, but at the same time, first of all, it just seems kind of like bad manners to me. Maybe that's just me, but it didn't seem quite right. And if they're trying to get, promo photos for their Instagram and that kind of thing, it's just not going to look great if they have models on there that aren't produced by them. So I have a great relationship with Warlord. They scratch my back. It seems only good to respect the HQ and take pure Warlord models. There's no point really at this stage fiddling around with a artillery platoon anymore because I could throw a howitzer in there, maybe something like that. But ultimately I just thought, scrap it. Let's get rid of the artillery platoon altogether. Getting rid of these light mortars as well. And I'm looking like I need to take another platoon. Now, at first, I toyed around with the idea of taking 2 infantry platoons and just having 8 squads of infantry with a couple of platoon commanders, just 10 dice, pure infantry on the nose. But it's a little bit crazy that, I had a couple of Fausts in there, but I just don't trust Fausts. They always seem to work against me, but I always seem to get a roll of a 1 when I want to roll for damage when I'm using Faust myself. So I just can't trust them as my only anti-tank solution. So at this stage, it was looking like some Panzerschrecks. Now, of course, I can take 1 Panzerschreck just in a platoon. I'll show you this guy. This is just a German Blitzkrieg M32 plastic sprue uniform and then spare bazooka from the American sprue. The new winter American sprue. I'm putting together a really nice American army for you guys. It's going to be on the tabletop in the next couple of months, but these things take time. However, not to get sidetracked, got 1 Shrek in there, and then, 1 Shrek, is it really enough? It's enough. It'll quickly pop the kind of vehicles I'm expecting to face, or if someone's got, a really heavy vehicle, it can pop that too, and I'll have loads more infantry than them, so it should be happy days. But I thought, 1 Shrek, things can go wrong. You can be shot by a sniper. You just have to really be careful if you've only got 1 anti-tank solution. It's just too risky once again. So instead, I decided to go a little bit crazy, probably go for overkill and go for 2 Shrek. It's looking like I'm taking a heavy weapons platoon here because then I can take the 2 Shreks. So I just slung in a couple of simple machine guns to add more Dakka because I haven't got that much Dakka in my list. I'm relying mainly on rifles. I haven't got SMGs to get up close and hose people down. I've only got a couple of LMGs and I don't really want to buy loads of LMGs. So in the end, it felt like just a little more Dakka, a couple more dice was probably a sensible way to go. So this gave me almost my final list. At this point, I was a few points over here. So I had to drop these units down to 6 men. So I've got 2 squads of 6. So with those little adaptations, let's go through this list in a bit more detail and I'll talk about how I think it'll operate and why I'm happy with my choices. So looking at this list in a bit more detail, what have we got? Well, we've got 2 squads of 7 sissy riflemen, still tough fighter all the way, and still master of the hunt. We've also got 2 squads of 6 sissy, again tough fighter, this time with 2 LMGs. So they cost the same, but I've sacrificed 1 man in the secondary squads to buy an LMG for a few more shots. They're led by a regular platoon commander on his own. He's just going to have to survive. Then we have 2 Panzerschreck teams, and we have 2 medium machine guns led by a regular platoon commander in a heavy weapons support platoon. Now overall, I'm much happier with this list in the context of the event. You see, it's much more thematic. Now I'm really bringing a classic Finn list in the way I've always wanted to play them. It's pure infantry and man-portable weapons here. We haven't got any artillery, nothing like that. We're just out there on deep reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines, hunting down those Soviets with our rifles, our rocket launchers, and our machine guns. So, theme is what Warlord want, and that is what I am bringing. On top of that, it's much less spicy here. It's a riskier list to play. It's not got as much killiness. The veteran units aren't as big or as survivable, and overall, I think at just 10 dice, I'm well under that dice limit, which means I'm not, that just gives me a handicap in and of itself. On top of that, it's a very beginner-friendly list for people who haven't necessarily played against Finns before or played much bolt action before, because I have no idea what the skill level of this tournament and the people who attend is going to be. So it's really straightforward. There's only 4 different unit types in this entire list. It's very symmetrical. I have 2 of everything, and it all does very straightforward things. I've got rocket launchers, I've got machine guns, and then I have infantry and I have commanders. That's it. Very easy to explain to someone who's not played Finns before. So they're not going to get caught out by all my sneaky maneuvers, or will they? Now let's take a look at how I think this list will operate and the reason for my unit selections and the synergy of this list in a bit more detail. So first of all, consider the infantry. Now, I could have gone for 4 squads of 7, or I could have had LMGs in each squad. But there's a very good reason why I haven't been precisely symmetrical, and I've got a couple of each type in this list. The first thing is that, although we're playing on a 4x4 table, it's always nice to have that little bit extra range with the LMGs, but that's by no means the main reason that I'm taking LMGs. Really what it is that relying on going into ambush and being able to just advance into ambush with rifle squads is a trap that I myself fell into when I was a new Finnish player. You see, you don't always have the dice advantage with Finns. I'm not going to have the dice advantage here, which means units that need to dash before I can get into ambush are going to be able to do that. My opponent will almost always get the first dice pull in any given turn if I've got 10 dice and they've got 11, 12, 13, something like that. On top of this, what that means is that sometimes you just need to be able to put that spray out. You're just going to be firing normally, just advancing and firing, or standing still and firing, because there's no point of going into ambush necessarily. You need to have that flexibility. You can't always be going into ambush. The whole point of a skirmishing list like this is that you're really flexible in the options and your units can really do anything that you ask of them. So with that in mind, although I've got a couple of rifleman squads that can advance into ambush when I need them to, and the LMGs can still advance into ambush and fire from ambush, they just won't get the bonus accuracy. They'll hit on 4s instead of 3s, not including pins of course. But overall it just means I've got a bit more firepower when I'm not firing from ambush. I've got a couple of extra shots in there just to give me a little more punch, because as I've said already, there's not that much DACA in this list. On top of that, I've decided to go for Tough Fighter because really this is a list that's all about maneuvers. I've got basically no fixed positions, but what this means is I can rely on my units to look after themselves. You see, I've only got 10 dice, I'm going to need that board control, and yeah, often you want your units to operate together, but in a skirmishing list like this where you need to be able to be flexible and move around the table as is tactically wise, then sometimes you need a unit to be able to rely on itself and hold off on the side, and that means it needs to be able to shoot and it needs to be able to fight, and all of these units can shoot and they can also fight reliably in close combat, because everyone's getting rerolls to hit in close combat in my infantry units. On top of that, it means that depending on the deployment and the mission and so on and so forth, if I need to get up into the centre of the board, let's say there's objectives in the centre of the board, and I can't rely on skirmishing away because I need to hold those objectives, then I'm going to need to be able to stand my ground. And again, Tough Fighter comes in there. At 1 point a man, it means that if someone gets too close to me with SMGs, I can charge them, stop them hosing me down. They'll have more shots than me. Or likewise, if they're going to charge me, they're in a real pickle because I'm veteran and I'm Tough Fighter all the way, not just a couple of SMGs scattered in the units. Finally, it really lets me pounce. I can advance into ambush, get in my opponent's face. If they've deployed spread out and I have the option, or they're coming on the board spread out, for example, and I see a vulnerable point in my opponent's lines, then I can really sling a couple of these infantry squads in there and exploit that gap and crack them open with a couple of nasty assaults. So again, it just keeps these units flexible. It means I can rely on any of them to do anything that I need in any battle, regardless of the mission or the opponent that I'm playing. Finally, in terms of the units, now they haven't got that much firepower, but they're certainly very tough. If they lose half their squad, they're going to be leadership 11, and 2 squads of 7 veterans, that's hard to shift. 2 squads of 6, they're not going to roll over easily either. There's just no easy unit to wipe out in my infantry here. They're going to hang on there until the bitter end. So ultimately, in terms of the infantry game, as you might call it, I'm feeling pretty good about this list. I've invested heavily in infantry, but I should be able to out-infantry my opponents. And with that, let's move on to the tank game, the armoured situation. So in terms of the armour situation, of course, I've got none of my own. That wouldn't fit with the theme of the list. In case you're wondering, this is the Winter German Support Pack Metal Panzerschreck, and this is one that I built from, as I mentioned earlier, Blitzkrieg Plastics German sprue, and actually I believe that's the Ranger bazooka from American Ranger sprue. Now, 2 Shreks, they've got that Pen 6 and they've got a 24-inch range. Now, on 4x4 tables, that's all I need, and I don't need transports for them either, because essentially they've got a threat range of 30 inches. I can move 6 inches and pop a shot hitting on a 5. Now that's not great odds, but next shot I'll hit on a 4, and of course, if my opponent wants to get close to me and bully me with armour, then he's going to be coming into my threat range. And it also means I can have these guys posted, covering my angles, to just protect my infantry as they take ground, take objectives, do what they need to do. They're protected from armour coming in and supporting my opponent's units by those Panzerschrecks, just being able to reach out that 24-inch range, and if they get that hit, Pen plus 6, that's going to deal with most units unless I get unlucky with a single blow. Now, I mentioned earlier that 1 Shrek just seemed too risky, as did relying on Panzerfausts. 2 Shreks, it means instead of it being risky, I can actually take some risks. I've got that redundancy. So if I need to sort of risk 1 Shrek to try and knock out a tank that I desperately need to knock out, and it doesn't work, I've still got another Shrek that I can play more cagely with. I don't have to worry. Also, maybe if I want to get into position to shoot some armour, but they've got a machine gun team or an infantry squad or something of that order that could shoot back and kill me before I get another shot, then I can risk that. I can risk being shot by a sniper, so on and so forth, because again, I've got that redundancy. Now, if I'm facing lots of light vehicles, you could consider Shrek's overkill. But remember, my Finns, with their rifles shooting from ambush, if I get those in ambush and someone wants to dash at me with a truck, I can quite readily shoot out a truck from underneath a unit with just the accuracy of the finish ambush. That's what their small arms are there for. Also, in terms of shooting down soft skins, I've got those 2 medium machine guns. If my opponent's got a truck brimming with veteran armed SMGs, or even a Katushka, or a truck with an autocannon on the back of it, or something like that, these MGs, you can bet, are going to be going into that anti-vehicle role and hosing that vehicle down. So what that means when it all comes together is I've got plenty of anti-vehicle options, because ultimately with 2 Shreks, even if my opponent has soft skin transports, soft skin vehicles and armoured vehicles all in there together, I've got plenty of options to take care of that soft skins, and that means that the Shreks can focus on only needing to take out the armoured option, so I don't need to waste those Shrek shots on things like trucks filled with veterans. On the other hand, if my opponent's taken 1 vehicle, but it's a more heavily armoured vehicle, maybe a Stug or a Panther, or even a Tiger, something like, or a KV, a tank, something like that, then I've got the penetration value to get through that armour. Maybe it'll take me a couple of shots, but heck, they'll only have 1 of those tanks more than likely, and I have a couple of shots because I have a couple of units. So at that point, I'd be outnumbering their armour with my anti-armour capability. So either way, I think it's a nice balance. And of course, if it comes up, the Shreks always have that HE option. Let's say my opponent has a sniper in a building, or even a unit of infantry, whatever it is that's dug in there. These Shreks can shoot into that building, and now they get that little 2-inch HE template. So again, they're just bringing extra options with them to the list. Now finally, the MGs. Of course, I could have taken a couple of mortars with 1 spotter for the exact same points, but ultimately I just wanted that Dakar. As I've said, I just needed more firepower because I've got a lot of squads that are just armed with rifles. I've not got many SMGs in there, I've not got many LMGs. I just need to throw some more dice down range, and it's as simple as that. If I took mortars, I don't almost have the time for mortars, is maybe the best way to put it. I've got to roll and eventually work my way down to that hit, and it's probably with 2 mortars not going to happen first turn, maybe not second turn as well. Now of course I can't do counter battery mortar fire, but do I really need to? Most of this army is going to be mobile. If they decide to zero in on those machine guns, I can let them chance it a couple of times, and then I can just move my machine gun, reset the clock, and really I'm outplaying them. I'm getting bursts of fire off. They're not getting any effect from their mortars because I'll just keep dodging them. I don't mind dashing for a turn to keep the machine gun alive if that's what the mortars have been focusing on all game. And everything else is probably going to be moving around a lot of the time, so if they want to start targeting it, it's not going to be a disadvantage to me to just move that unit. Oh no, I've got to advance into ambush, how terrible. So that's the list overall, guys. Don't think it's too spicy. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. I have got a lot of veteran infantry. Is this list friendly enough for a friendly event? What would you have taken? Have I hamstringed myself? Have I handicapped myself and I should have stuck with my original list? Or do you even think this list is better than the original? If you like what we do here, make sure you like the video and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all of our weekly bolt action content. And of course, a huge thank you to all of our channel members who just keep us ticking over with all the materials that we need to keep the channel running. For example, I'm just about to use this snow basing material that I picked up with the channel member money this month, and that is going to let me just finish off the snowy bases. And as you can see, I've already been putting it into action with my machine gun squads, and I'm sure you'll agree it leaves a very nice snow effect on the bases. So I'm happy with that, and thank you to my brother Tim, or Mordian Glory as you guys know him, for recommending that part. So with all that being said, I hope you found this video interesting and entertaining. This has been the Scholar Progenium. Thank you very much for your time. Goodbye.